In the last section, we finished up downloading the Flutter SDK, and then we extracted it into a workspace directory. We're now going to do a little bit of setup on our local path variable to make sure that our terminal watches that Flutter directory. So this last step right here is a little bit complicated, so let's take a look at a quick diagram to explain exactly what we're going to do. Okay, so at some point in time, in the very near future, you and I are going to want to use that Flutter SDK that we just extracted from our terminal. We're going to use that SDK to generate new Flutter projects and run projects that we have created. So inside of our terminal, at some point in time, you and I are going to want to run this Flutter command. However, if you open up your terminal right now and try to run the command Flutter, you'll probably see something like this, something that says command not found. So even though we have installed the SDK or extracted it onto our local machine, there is nothing that has actually wired up that Flutter tool to our terminal. And so that's what we have to do right now. Now, to wire up Flutter to our terminal, we're going to make a little change to something called the path variable. The path variable is what your terminal uses whenever it tries to interpret a command that you execute. So when you and I run a command like Flutter right here, your terminal is going to look at a variable inside of it, the terminal, called path. That path variable stores references to a couple of different directories on your local machine. If you want to see the different directories that are referenced by path, you can go over to your terminal right now and write out echo path. So inside this long string, you'll see that there's a couple of different folder references, all separated by colons. And so what this means right here is that if I run the command Flutter right now, terminal is going to look at that path variable. It's going to look at all the different directories that it references. So for me, I have user local bin, user bin, bin, user sbin. So my terminal is going to look into each of those directories, and in each of them, it's going to try to find a program called Flutter that it can execute. But of course, right now, none of those directories have a Flutter program inside them. The actual Flutter program that we want to run is inside that Flutter directory that we just created, nested inside of a subdirectory called bin. As a matter of fact, if I go back over to my Finder window right now, here's the Flutter directory that was just created, here's the bin directory, and inside there is a program called Flutter. So this right here is the program that we want our terminal to run. So that's what we're doing right now. We need to make sure that this path variable tries to look at that bin directory anytime that we run a program at the terminal. So to do so, I'm going to open up my terminal window, and I'm first going to navigate to that Flutter directory that we just created. So for me, that's inside of my workspace directory. Inside there is the Flutter directory that was just created. I'm going to change into there. I'll print out all the files and folders inside that Flutter directory, and then I'm going to change into that bin folder that we just spoke about. So now that I'm inside of bin, I could print out everything inside of here, and right there, that is the Flutter program that you and I want to attempt to execute. So we want to essentially add this current bin directory to our path variable. The first thing we're going to do is print out the path to this folder that we are currently looking at. I could print out the entire path to it by writing out pwd, which stands for present working directory. When I run that command, it'll print out the entire path to get to this current folder. So again, for me, I see workspace inside of here because that is the kind of working directory that I use for all of my projects. But you might have something totally different on your local machine, depending upon where you extracted that Flutter zip file. So I'm now going to highlight this entire path, and I'm going to copy it. I'm now going to open up a second terminal window, and inside this new terminal window, we're going to attempt to modify that path variable. I'm going to first begin by changing back to my home directory by writing cd // and then I'm going to print out all the files and folders inside of this home directory by running the command ls-a. Now the -a switch on there, like ls-a, the -a part is going to make sure that I print out all the hidden files and folders inside of here as well. And so if I scroll up a little bit, one of the hidden files inside of here is the .bash profile. So this is the file that we are going to use to manipulate our path variable. If you do not have a .bash profile file inside of here, you can create that file by running the command touch.bash profile like so. But again, you only have to do that if you do not have that directory or that file listed. Okay, so I'm now going to open up that file and attempt to edit it. So I'm going to run the command nano.bash profile. And that's going to open up a command line text editor. Inside of here, you'll notice that my bash profile is currently empty. You might have some amount of code inside of here already, which is totally fine. We are not going to change anything inside of here. We are going to make only one addition to this file. And so anywhere inside of here, we're going to write out the command export, and we're going to say path equals, and then we're going to paste in that long directory that we just copied a second ago that takes us all the way to that bin folder. So I'm going to say export path equals, and I'm going to paste in that big long path. And again, yours is probably going to look slightly different than mine if you call your working directory anything besides workspace. Now, after I print out that entire directory, I'm then going to put a colon at the very end and put $path, like so. Once I've got this all put together, I'm going to save the file by hitting Control X. You'll see that down here it's asking if I want to save the changes that I just made, and I'm going to say yes. And that's going to ask me for the file name I want to write, and I'll just hit enter, like so. Okay, so that's it. Now to test this out, I'm going to entirely close my terminal window. So I'm going to hit Command Q, and then I'm going to open Terminal Backup. Now with the terminal back up, I can now test out and make sure that I've correctly wired up that flutter command by simply running flutter, like so. And once I do so, you'll notice that you should see something like this right here pop up. So if you don't see something like this pop up, if you see something that says command not recognized, that means that something just went wrong when you were setting up your path variable. I encourage you to start this section over again and rewatch it and make sure that you copy paste all those directories appropriately. Okay, so that's it. Let's take a quick break right here. We'll continue in the next section where we're going to start doing some emulator setup on our local machine.